All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to part three of our CEO series. And tonight we'll be talking with Helena, co-founder and CEO of Supportive. And tonight we'll be talking about acing the interview process, which I feel like is appropriate for right now. All right, so here's the agenda. We'll do some introductions. We'll hear from Helena, talk about Supportive, their offerings, how she came to found this great company, and then we'll get into some discussion. All right, Helena, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this business, and then tell us about Supportive.
Certainly. So thanks, everyone. I am now on my second go around as the CEO of a digital health company. My first company was actually in the digital physical therapy space. So I didn't venture too far from therapy as a concept. And what attracted me to get into digital health in the first place was really about accessibility for those who, for all of the reasons that we can list off, have challenges getting to appointments, seeking appointments, concurrently over time, especially with, jobs that may not be as flexible as some of us are used to. And in thinking about that concept and the success I had in the physical therapy space, I began to think about, what could that look like in the mental health space? And what could it look like for people that are reluctant to seek treatment in the traditional mental health system? I'll talk a little bit more about that, but my coming together around the concept of Supportive, which is an on-demand peer-to-peer support service, was really, a leading in point from prior roles that I'd had that were all built around technology and mass communication and using artificial intelligence and adaptive learning in really, teaching methods. So right prior to entering digital health, I worked at Scholastic. I was an executive director in their educational software and services group, and it was really about software to target students with learning challenges in literature and mathematics. And then how do you train teachers to be able to, dispense and effectively use the software in the classroom? Like, how do you show teachers how to adapt their own teaching skills around those with, diagnosed learning challenges, things like that. So you can see there's a lot of parallels there. Yeah. And before that, I'd actually come from the media field. I, in a way old life, had actually been a journalist, started in international markets. So I was all about studying, technology and innovation in foreign countries and how you can transfer the best of what's happening in one market to another market. And at Condé Nast, I was kind of studying the best across the portfolio of media that they have, which includes the New Yorker and Vanity Fair, sports publications, you name it, and thinking about launching, new paper and digital publications. So there was a lot of kind of like, adaptive, technology implications, a lot of like mass market reach implications, a lot of diagnostic and treatment applications. So it all kind of fused together for me in mental health because I have a family member who is paranoid schizophrenic. And because of that, as you can imagine, it's quite challenging as a family member who's coping with that and being part of that sort of sphere of chaos. And so I had sought out other families who were experiencing something like that so that I could find peers myself who, I could lean on and they could lean on me and we could have something in common and kind of figure out how to handle situations as they chaotically arose together. And so you can see that all of these things fuse together in little bits and pieces, not necessarily in any, cohesive order, but in a way that generated this concept of how do you make peer support available any time of day? How do you make it safe? How do you, have it be a forum that really addresses like the shared lived experience of people and their needs, which are going to vary, because one minute it might be about a mental health challenge, the next it's a parenting challenge, the next it's a financial challenge, caregiving, burnout, so that there are just these enormous waves of emotional challenges that are facing us. And one forum or one, peer support mentor mentee for one topic isn't going to cut it anymore. What you need is that ability to jump from topic to topic and always have kind of the right support system built around you, if you will, and have that, back and forth flow of communication and support with people, no matter what the topic is. So thus was born the concept of supportive. We also really felt like, a lot of the approaches that are traditional in healthcare are not serving individuals in terms of like the diagnostic requirements, the assessment requirements, the profile filling out, the questionnaires. They are just endless. And I think every single person can identify with just that feeling of, when you're handed another one or you're just shown another screen. And so we thought, how do you eliminate that? And so we built a platform around the concept of natural language understanding. And what that means is that when you come to supportive, all anyone has to do is answer one single question. What's your struggle? And you can type a word or a phrase or a paragraph if you want, and we take over from there. So we actually will match you in real time with concurrent users into a small group chat based upon the commonality of the topic that you want to talk about at any given moment, day or night. And then what really makes it safe and productive is that we provide a peer support moderator. So not a one-on-one specialist in your topic, because the other specialists are going to be other people like you coming to the platform. But they are like a master facilitator. And so they're going to guide the continuum of the conversation from the venting, from the active listening, into things like the introduction of self-help coping tools, into the introduction of things like worksheets that exist, in the public domain and are really practical, but you just don't know how to find them in that moment of need. So we are actually kind of reading the chat conversation as it's happening and hyperlinking in the right resources that are precision matching to what users are expressing their needs are. We're doing this all, like we said, around the clock. We're doing it for all ages, so 13 plus. We actually have Medicare clients, so we've got folks in their 70s and 80s, and everything in between. So, teens and universities to Medicare. In between, we've got health plans and employers. We have 2 Fortune 5 companies as clients. We are operating across countries because this is subclinical and we don't have that geographical licensing constraints. And so far we have served over 1.2 million individuals.
Wow. Go virtual village. Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing. It's amazing. It's so needed too. So much need for that.
I think, as you probably your entire community has found, the demand is never ending and growing, and there's just overspill. And so there's overspill from people that maybe need attention in between therapy appointments. And then there is also pent up demand from a lot of, like we said, people who don't usually engage in the mental health system. So 43% of our users are male. 32% of our users are non-white. And these are, things that we're really proud of, because we've put something out there that people are not, seeing as the other. It's just seeing like, I'm just going to talk to people who are like me, and it feels safe and it feels comfortable.
Good. I love that. Love the model. Thank you for sharing. All right. So, do you want to talk about these open roles?
Yeah, sure. And then we'll dig into the heart of it. So
Yeah.
because of your community and because it's such a good fit, we wanted to share that we do have two open roles that are perfect for anyone who's completing their education in any field related to psychology, social work. We offer the opportunity for paid writing. And there's plenty more information and sample articles, what we're looking for. This is something that you can use to kind of build up your portfolio too, because not only will it live on the supportive site where we have about 200,000 visitors per month, but this is something that you can co-post on any of your own sites where you're trying to grow your personal brand. So that's one opportunity that's kind of like, ad hoc and can fit around your schedule. And then we are actually looking for a senior director of clinical oversight. So even though we are subclinical, and this wouldn't involve, platform, user interaction, what this role would be doing is helping to oversee, our moderator community. We have several hundred peer support moderators. We have training programs in place for them, and this would be an opportunity to help iterate and improve those training programs, help in skill building, help in some of the publications we're putting out, look at our data and look at the outcomes that we're generating. So this role has a lot of different touch points in terms of, your opportunity to really take the skill set that you've developed and apply it to mass population needs.
Nice. So for the senior role, are you looking for anyone in particular, like a certain licensure, certain amount of years of experience?
I do not believe in designating years of experience because I think, innovation and entrepreneurialism can come from anywhere. We're looking for, yes, licensure. So LCSW, MSW, PhD, probably in counseling psychology. Of course, we'll consider clinical psychology too. There's probably degrees that I am leaving off the list unintentionally. But we are looking for a good cultural fit in terms of our goals in serving the underserved. We're looking for someone who wants to roll up their sleeves and have all those different kind of domain touch points. So yeah, there's no like limitations on required years of experience or anything like that.
Oh, okay. So will it be okay for me to share these in the community after this chat?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, let me go back one. So while we're here, let's talk about interviewing. So one thing that we get bombarded with in our community, questions surrounding like, oh my gosh, Jacqueline, but it says that there are 1,000 people that applied to this position. What can I possibly say or do if I get a chance to even talk to a recruiter on the phone? Like,
Yep.
what is my first step?
Well, I would say first step is let's improve your chances of getting that recruiter, to talk to you. And I think that, when sometimes you see these online listings, case in point, and you see like, here's how to apply, and there's very strict instructions, like, yes, make sure you're following the instructions and submitting whatever they're asking for through their channels. But there's always tons of ways to kind of double and triple your chances. So definitely, look into your own network and see if you know anyone who knows anyone who works at that company and try to make contact with them. And we'll get about, how to set yourself apart when you do that. Two, a lot of roles these days don't ask for cover letters anymore. They've kind of become passé. But a way to really stand apart for your application wise is to craft something that is sort of like a, modern cover letter. It's really short, it's to the point, but just the idea of putting down why you feel excited about a role, or what it is, one thing that's special about you that you bring to the role, and putting it in writing actually can be enough to like set yourself apart these days, because so few people do it. They just apply, ding, 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 ding on LinkedIn or whatever the case is. And when you're that one person that's written a paragraph or two, like that's a differentiator. Three, almost every company, and I wish it were every company, has a contact form on their website too. And so even if there is like a designated online application, form, there's always a chance to take that paragraph that you've written and submit it through, their info at, or their contact at, like email address. Because chances are whoever is the person inside of a company that is the recipient of that will be like, oh, this is someone applying for this job. I'm going to forward it to the person who, I know is hiring. So I would definitely say, like, over, around, under, like, try to get in a couple of different touch points into the company. Then let's talk about like what you would want to say if you have one of those touch points, because then that's kind of getting into the standard part is when someone is hiring, like, it is really about one, has a candidate done a little bit of homework? I don't expect like full on homework in the application stage, but do they know a little bit about our company and what we think makes us special? So just showing in a sentence that, you have taken the time to visit their website, to, read something that the company has talked about, and kind of, that you've actively listened and you can like offer something back, paraphrase it back. That's a key differentiator. And then it's, what is it that you bring to the role that's going to make you succeed in that role? Because you'd be surprised, a lot of people focus on, like, a lot of applicants focus on, what is this role going to do for me? This role is going to teach me how to do this, and this role is going to be a stepping stone in my career to go X, Y, and Z. And the company is like, well, hey, what are you going to do for us? And I think that showing, from that first point of entry, that you really have something to offer that's going to solve the need that we have shown the world that we have by even posting the job, is like, those are two little key points that are going to set you apart right out of the gate.
I think, and I'm inviting everyone to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A at any point in time. But to speak to that last part, I think that a lot of mental health professionals, I'll include myself, we have been in a position for a very long time, and even now, where you can get a job and you know that you are going to bring value. But when you're trying to get into some of these companies, you have to flip that. It can no longer be like, I am the clinician, I'm bringing this, I know I can do this. It has to be totally different. It's almost as if, don't you want to get clients? Like, what would you do to get a client? Or what would you do to bring a client to succeed in sessions? Like, what skills do you have? And I think that's a great point, that you have to, I feel like it's uncomfortable for us to sell ourselves, but you have to do that. But I also like the point that not only applying for a job and saying, like, I know I can do this, but not only can I do it, but I can take this role to the next level. And this is how. That was great advice.
Yes, because it's yeah, I think to your point, what the therapist community is good at is the listening and reflecting, right? So think of a job position as something that you've listened to. You've heard the company say what they need, and now you're going to reflect it back to them and show them that you have listened and that you've interpreted and that, like, you care about what they need. So it can like reframe it into the skills that you bring to bear every single day. And just have that little like perspective on, showing the company that you are like there to deliver for them.
Now, let's say you get to the interview, and I'd love for you to talk about your own experience when you've interviewed people in this position or in any other senior level position.
Mhm.
What is one thing that a candidate can do that you can say, nope, like, what's one thing that's like, oh, nope, not gonna happen, not moving
Yeah.
on to any rounds?
Yeah. So, gosh, um, I mean, straight out of the gate, it is like, how much are you, again, kind of paying attention to what I'm saying? Like, this goes back to, are you focused? Are you present? Are you showing energy? Are you showing that you're dialed in to the question that I'm like asking, and not kind of like, a lot of times when you prepare, like say you're nervous and you prepare and you like anticipate questions that someone's going to ask, and you have your talking points that you want to deliver. If you go into the mode where like you have an agenda of all of the things that you think you need to say, but they're not matching up to the questions that I'm asking or the interviewer is asking, because you're on like auto delivery mode, that's going to be a turnoff, because it shows, yeah, maybe you're bulleting out your skills and you're confident, but you're not attuned with what I'm like asking for at every step of the way. So that would be one. Another turnoff would be when you're coming in blind. So this is where, I said in the early stages, it's good to kind of take a look at the website. But as you get like stage 1 interview, stage 2 interview, you're going to want to kind of reveal more and more of your knowledge about the company and how it operates, and let that level of knowledge depend on the seniority of the person you're talking to as well. So sure, if it's the recruiter, if it's an HR person as that first step, just kind of sharing a few high level observations about the company is going to kind of check the boxes. But then you're going to want to do even more preparation as you kind of move on to the next stage. And by the time you reach someone at the top of the organization, you're going to really want to be full of, perspective, feedback, even if it's critical feedback about what you think the company is doing. The more you can show that you know about the company, the better. So I would say a turnoff is coming in acting like you have no, knowledge, or you don't know what the company does or how it differentiates. And that happens all the time. So, doing that little bit of extra prep work really makes all the difference in the world.
Okay. And to go a little more into that, what is one thing or something that I think we talked about this in a meeting that you and I had, and I really enjoyed it. Tell me about an experience that you had where you were like, yep, this is the person. This is it.
Okay. So to give you some background, we recently had an open position for which we got 270 applicants. So not completely overwhelming number, but it felt a little overwhelming at the time. And we vetted, so we took 270 down to 18 people that one of our team members did kind of an initial meeting with. And then from 18, we went to 10. And then I met with 10 people. And the one that just knocked it out of the park had really gone, far beyond what we asked for, what I was expecting in the meeting, and really kind of like laid out where they saw us, like in the ecosystem of, all mental health offerings, and showed that they had done a great deal of prep work and saying, like on this end, we have teletherapy, and, then we have coaching, and then we have peer support, and then we have like the meditative and, mindfulness offerings. And they put us on a continuum and kind of broke down, what they thought like use cases were that people would seek for like each of these modules. And like, this is a very specific example to us, but I'm just trying to show like, I don't know how much time this person put into it, maybe a couple hours, but it took them right to the top of the list, because that level of thoughtfulness and that level of showing that they were, if they entered our company, they were going to hit the ground running. They weren't going to need time and energy from us in terms of preparing them. And that they've illustrated that they are an initiative taker. They illustrated that, they are curious and they're fast learners. They're illustrated that they're going to like teach other people in the organization what they learn. Like there's all these intangible factors that this one action that they took communicated to us. And so, I please don't think that I'm saying to do this exact thing for any other organization. It's just that there's always going to be, some way that you can put in that extra hour, put in that 2 extra hours to really just blow people's minds.
Wow, that's amazing. What are your thoughts on, and this is just me asking this question, what are your thoughts on if you are applying for a job, you don't meet all of the descriptors, like you don't fit every single box?
Mhm.
How can you then position yourself, or is it okay to say, listen, and when you make it to the interview, listen, I don't have all of these skills, but how does a person pitch to a leader that they can learn those skills?
Mhm. So, I mean, first of all, I think absolutely apply. I mean, I think, hopefully we're speaking to a solid number of women here, but I think that there's a lot of data out there that shows that there's a huge differential in sort of like percentage of qualifications in a job role that the male brain sees and thinks I'm qualified versus what the female brain sees and thinks that they're qualified. And I will say that in my career, having changed industries so many times, very rarely did I have any industry experience. For example, like when I moved into education, it was my first time. When I moved into healthcare, it was my first time. And please do not let any missing qualifications hold you back. To go further into that, depending on how big the organization is to whom you're applying, there are going to be, as you said, these recruiters and these kind of like interim screeners and HR who have the checklist and they're just kind of checking, does this person meet all of these things? So that's actually, can go either way. So this is not a piece of advice that I, have heard other people say. This is not like data backed, but I think it would be okay if you're going to go to the effort of writing, a paragraph or 2 about yourself, to actually say in there, while I don't meet qualification X, like here is my plan, by a start date, I would learn this new software program. By a start date, I am going to take an Excel class, by the start date, I'm going to do this, and show commitment right out of the gate, because honestly, that's going to be enough for them to say this person fits this thing too. It really doesn't take much to say like, yeah, check that box, like they're going to take care of it. And well, of course you have to follow through on that, but but saying it, I think it's fine to address it. And I think that, maybe we'll get into this a little bit more, but usually at the end of each interview, there's an opportunity to ask questions. And I would say that one way that you could really make sure that you're not getting discounted or disqualified is at the end, use one of your questions to reflect back. We covered X, Y, and Z. You interviewer may have noted that I am lacking D. I just want to make a note that here's my plan, or here's how I would handle it, or, I have a colleague who does that type of function at another organization, and they've promised to brief me on it, or like use that time wisely that you have to address it. Because if you've made it that far and then you ignore it and kind of hope to like, they're not going to notice, someone's going to notice, and someone's going to ding you when you're not present and you're not in the room and you're not having a chance to speak up for yourself.
Yeah, I want to say that I got a job like that. I
Thank
got a
you.
job like that. And also that same job I got because I filled out the contact me box.
Yes, good. This
So
is all.
I think that that's, I didn't even think of that, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I was very vulnerable. And I said, if I'm not the right fit for this position, I'm happy to be chief of staff. I'm happy to be this. Like I just went and named a bunch of roles that I thought could fit, because also some of the roles that people in our community are applying for are companies who just started, and they don't, they can't really take a chance on someone who doesn't know a few things. But I think that that's a good point to put it in a cover letter. Say, I know you all are just hitting the ground, but I've done research. Like I can take these and I also did that same thing. I came in and I'm like, I'm going to take these classes, and they happily paid for those things actually.
Yeah.
I think that that's a great idea.
Nice. I mean, to your point about what you demonstrated to me when you said, even if this isn't the right role, this is X, Y, and Z, is just, extraordinary excitement about what I, the interviewer, am a part of and what we're building. And to me, if you're not the right candidate and you've said that, you're filed away in my brain. I mean, I have recently in the past year brought on a new team member who was someone that I had met 7 years prior, I think, because I had filed that person away as showing, exuberance and skills that, might be important someday. And you just never know like what it is that you're going to be clicking in someone's brain. Maybe there's a role coming up in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months, and like they're going to remember you and they're going to bring you back.
Very true. I think that that's very true. Now, one question we get a lot of, and this is a hot topic, but I just would love your feedback for our community. What are your thoughts on companies, big and small, asking for people to perform and do projects, and taking a lot of time signing NDAs, and like kind of what are your feelings about that? Like, do you feel like that should be a part of all interview processes or just like certain roles?
Gosh, okay. So I would say that what you're describing is really common in the tech community. And the reason that it's common is because software engineers do it all the time. There is no such thing as a software engineer getting a job without doing, a coding exercise, and kind of like tricky ones too, not necessarily straightforward ones. So I think that what's happened is that practice that's very common in engineering has drifted towards the other roles in companies that are tech companies. And even though that didn't used to be the norm, it has become the norm. In a way, as jarring and unpleasant as it seems, it's kind of the company being fair, because it's like, well, why would we put this set of employees through gymnastic hurdles to prove themselves, and like let these employees walk through the door without having proven themselves? So, I actually have never thought about it that way, but there is like definitely in hiring, there's, this need and desire to be fair. And so I think that, it may have sprung, I didn't mean to put fair in quotes, to actually be fair. I didn't mean it that way. But I think so that's where it comes from. So like, I think that if I look back in my career, the first time I was ever asked to kind of like perform on command, it was really off-putting and it made me angry. And, but like now on the flip side of it, I can see like if I didn't ask for the same type of project from everyone, it wouldn't be fair to the employees that do have to do it. So that's one thing. Two, gosh, I think that because there's so many different, you know, styles of companies and different backgrounds of people, and gosh, there's going to be different types of projects that are all over the map, right? And some of them are going to be way over the top, too onerous. And yeah, that's a red flag. That's fair to say. I shouldn't have to write, you know, a thesis level like report for you guys. Like, that's too much. And if a company is asking for that, perhaps it's a bad sign. I can give an example of, you know, in a recent hiring position that we did, we actually asked everyone who made it to a certain level to do a 10-minute presentation on any topic they wanted. And the
Oh,
reason we did that was because, yeah, we're going to be able to, you know, it's going to be a little apples and oranges, but we're going to get a flavor of what topic did someone pick? Like when the choices are endless, what do you zero in on? And how are you going to like show your creativity in this 10-minute presentation? And what are we going to learn about, you know, how you convey information? And so we, you know, we're trying to like have a project, have something that's going to take time, but not be overbearing about it, and to let people, you know, put their own stamp on it. And I mean, we thought a lot about what is, you know, what is enough, but not too much. And so I hope that that reflects, you know, on us as a company in terms of like what we were trying to show empathy for, and like how much it takes for people to prepare and go through. And so I'm using that as an example of hopefully us being on the good side, and like hopefully the thesis being on the too difficult side. But you know, yeah, it's perfectly fair to make a judgment about a company based on what they're asking for you. In terms of NDAs, I think that that is really only warranted when a company is sharing proprietary information with you. So if they're giving you, say, data, and they want you user data, and they want you to show some analysis of user data, then yes, like that is an example of where an MDA makes sense. And like, you know, please don't be offended by it. It's for safety and liability, and we have all sorts of constraints about who we can share data with. So that would be an example. Two, if we're going to show you technology that's not on the market yet. So say it's like a product role, and, you know, we want to get your input or feedback or see what your thought process is around something that is not market ready, is in development. An NDA would be important, you know, from that perspective, in terms of, you know, this is not public information. So I think that would be warranted. If it's not scenarios like that, where it's, you know, they're sharing public information and it's, you know, it's, I don't know, like kind of basic stuff. If they're ever asking you to sign away your rights, like if you produce something for them and they want to own whatever you produce, I would say that's a red flag.
we've heard that in that community.
So that is a red flag. That's not, yeah. And I'm sure all of these things happen, like just as you're pointing out. I think, you know, I think it's fair game to ask too, you know, oh, you sent me an NDA. Are you going to be sharing like non-public information? Is this going to be proprietary? And use that as a point of judgment and how they answer your question.
That's good feedback. Thank you for that.
Sure.
One other question that I have, Nikita said that was amazing. I'm sure she was talking about your experience with the one candidate. One other question that we get a lot is about like salary. When do you find like it's appropriate to ask those questions? How would you ask them? Because you and I have also talked about this before too, that sometimes women, we undervalue ourselves. We don't know how to ask for money. We don't practice asking. Any tips on that for our audience of clinicians or mental health professionals that just don't know what to ask, don't know when to ask, don't know what to say. And sometimes people feel afraid to ask at a certain point in the interview because they're scared that, oh, I asked this. Now
Mhm.
they're not going to call me back. Like tell me thoughts on that.
Yep. Okay, so a couple of thoughts. One, in the initial stages when you're, doing the around, under, over like scenario to try to make a touch point with someone who works at the company, if you're able to connect with that person and kind of just have a chat about what it's like to work there, I think that the like tide and the culture is changing about, just being able to ask people like, what are the salaries like there? Are they thumbs up? Are they above market? Are they thumbs down? Are they below market? Like, not to necessarily ask somebody what they're making, like, please don't do that. But, like how, what is the structure between, say, base pay versus bonus pay versus equity at your company, and just explain, I'm just asking you for general information so that I am prepared for the interview. And I think that asking those kind of general questions and how that person answers will give you a lot of like light. Two, gosh, there's always this like chicken and egg with the salary thing, right? It's like, actually, of all the scenarios, and I think back on like all the times I've been the interviewee, like the most terrifying moment is when they ask you
Yes.
what your salary expectations are, right? So one way to get around that is to strike first. Like, it's the opposite. And to ask, what, like, could you tell me what the salary range for this position is? And that's fair game. The word range is such a magic word. It diffuses like the horror and the shock and the awkwardness of saying it, because as soon as you put the word salary range together, it's like, okay, the range is this to this.
Yeah.
It's not a scary thing anymore. And I think that when you get to kind of like jump in and ask first, it lets you know, one, is this matching my expectations? Do I fall in the range? Okay, it kind of sets you like, okay, I actually want something that's 10K above the range. So I'm really going to have to, overperform in these interviews to show them that I, deserve it. And you don't really want to have an in-depth conversation too early. You just want that range number. If you get past that and it starts to snowball and you start talking about your expectations and how much vacation days you want, and like, that's a big no, because then it's like, well, what is this interview really about? This is like, they're thinking about the package, not about the role. But beginning and ending, first shot, range, get your information, write it down, plan your attack for the next, like, subsequent meetings. Like, that's a good strategy.
Yeah. And so I guess another thing regarding this is another question we get asked, like, how soon do you want to know that range? Because you don't want to go through a 10-stage interview and then you get to the end and the range is like severely below market. Is there a place, like maybe in the cover letter area or the first touch point, a way that you can either propose your own range or ask that range? Is that okay to do?
I would advise against putting it in the cover letter. I would say that very first touch point, even is actually not even just even if, but especially if it's a recruiter or HR, because those are actually, I think, the easiest and like, some of the most transparent people to talk with. And that's got to be almost part of their knowledge base. Like, they may have the sort of the HR recruiter function is not going to have intimate knowledge about the day-to-day, interactions and workings of this role. They are going to have the parameters of the role. And I would say that the salary range is part of the parameters, and they might actually be the friendliest and least intimidating person to ask. So I think, not the beginning of that first touch point, not the middle of it, but the end. Are there any other questions? Are there, what else can I tell you about this role? Could you tell me the salary range?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have that many minutes. We don't have that much time left, but I wanted to also just tell the audience, please, if you have any other questions, feel free to jot them down. One last thing is, how do you, what are your thoughts on sending a follow-up thank you or email or at the end of this whole thing? Do you recommend that?
Yes. Oh, like absolutely. So, I think that email is like the only good form to do it. So please, it's sort of weird. I don't want to get a phone call. I don't want to get a text. Even if you have my phone number, because it's like in emails that we've exchanged, like that's a little too over the top. I want an email, and I actually love it if at the end of the interview and someone doesn't have my email, that they have the presence of mind to ask for it. So that's a good sign. It shows attention to detail. It shows that you're already planning ahead. So ask for their email if you don't have it. And, there's also it's like a date, right? I mean, if you follow up 5 minutes after the interview, an hour after the interview, 2 hours after the interview, it's a little bit creepy. I think that end of day, you can even send it after working hours. If you want to type it right away, great, but use your, email later. So end of day, the same day is perfect. The next morning is perfect. Honestly, if it goes more than 24 hours, I'm just I'm not going to get one. And the person is kind of they get the ding and the didn't send one. Then let's talk about the substance of the follow-up email, because just because you sent one doesn't mean you're impressing me, because these emails can sound formulaic and, thank you for your time. It was so great to meet you. I'm looking forward to hearing next steps. That doesn't count. You're not getting a bonus star in my eyes. That's generic, and you've sent that 100 times and it has no reflection of what we talked about. So here is, your chance to show your reflection skills. One, are you paraphrasing something that seemed like an important moment in the meeting? Two, is there anything else that it's occurred to you after the meeting took place? Was there, an aha moment or a reflection, or I gave this more thought and here's an embellishment to my response on this? Are you realizing that something was neglected, that you had, that someone should know about you, that you didn't get a chance to talk about, sentence on that? And then any of those, skills that we talked about earlier, maybe you're not checking that box on one of the, required skills, but you have a plan of how you're going to address it, or they gave you a clue about it, or they told you it wasn't that important, or they told you it was the most important thing, so what did they share that you can show that you're determined to address X, Y, and Z, bring it home. That to me is a winning combination that is going to totally set you apart in terms of wow, this person is engaged in our, hiring process. They want this job. They are enthusiastic about what we're doing. They've addressed anything I was worried about. Boom, they're going to the next step. Yeah.
Nice. We have one question. Can you talk a bit about LinkedIn etiquette and reaching out to recruiters? What are your thoughts on people reaching out to you directly about roles and with recruiters in your experience in past or current?
Yeah. So, gosh, I am a little bit personally kind of persnickety about LinkedIn. So I will share my personal take on it. But just keep in mind, this is, a reflection of me, and I can't speak on the industry as a whole. But one of my pet peeves is people trying to send me a connection request before I've actually ever met them. And so that in my mind is a bit of a no-no, because I'm not going to connect and instantly have you as part of my network until we've had a conversation. I think that there's a limited number of outbound messages that you can send on LinkedIn per month, unless you have those packages. I'm not here to sell LinkedIn premium, but messaging with something really like heartfelt, like that gets through to me. If someone is taking the time to, tell me about themselves, say, I applied for this role, but I just wanted to reach you here and tell you X, Y, and Z. Like, I like that. I think that it needs to be informational, and you want to be kind of like selling yourself, because if there's like a, hey, if someone wants something from me, right? Imagine getting, I don't know anyone, but they're saying, can I have a minute of your time? Can I pick your brain? No brain picking. Like, so if you're going to use the messages, use it to convey interest, use it to convey enthusiasm, use it to reiterate, X, Y, and Z points, and hope that you're going to get, a moment of their attention. But try not to blindly like ask someone in a hiring position for favorable, attention, because that's not going to happen. What you can ask is the other people at the company. I mean, so there's the distinction is like the hirer and then the other people, and the other people in the company you can ask, and you can ask friends of, LinkedIn networks for intros and stuff. But when you're in hiring mode, you actually really can't show like deferential attention to people, because that's, that can get you into like legal issues, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, on my own take about reaching out to recruiters, it's that I think recruiters will somehow let you know that they're okay with that. Like something about how they post the job. And if they have, I'm hiring a lot, like all over the place.
Yes.
They might be okay with you sending
Yes,
them
that's a
a
good.
message.
Thank you for like course correcting me there too, because yes, I think that's a big difference, is if you know that they're open to it, like go for it. That's yes.
And not the CEO.
Yeah.
The recruiters, yes, they live for that.
Yes,
They live for those connections. They live for that. But I would also take what you said is, don't reach out just with a question, like reach out with something tangible that they can leave with, like
offer something of value, even if it's just about yourself and your candidacy.
Right.
But people will accept an offering, people will shy away from an ask. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. So any last final tips, anything else that you'd like to share about supportive before we wrap up?
Gosh. Well, I will say, going back to something that you said earlier, which is that, we mentioned the 2 roles that we have available. That's today. Like, that's an evolving, changing, needs grow in areas that we don't even anticipate, like month to month when you're a startup. So if there's something like you said, specific, I would be good at this, or if you ever need this, or, here's my interest area. And if you find yourself a few months from now, like, needing that, like, think of me. I'm totally open to those kind of communications, because I'll store them away, and, they'll be my little squirrel nuts that I'll keep until I need them someday. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Helena, and thank you everyone for coming. I am very excited to share this recording with my network and with Therapists in Tech, because as we know, lots of people have been experiencing and have been affected by layoffs, and lots of people are interviewing right now. So these helpful tips will definitely do wonders for our community. So I really appreciate this.
Thank you for